Hi there, Andrew Kalita from On Demand HR here. Today we're going to be discussing what is no doubt one of the hot HR topics of 2023, and that is international migration and working visas. And to help us unpack this, we're joined by Melanie McFarlane, who founded Migration back in 2007, and today has a staff of over 100 people assisting in the process as a registered migration agent. So really looking forward to digging into her perspective, experience, and thoughts on migration as it relates to Australian businesses for 2023 and beyond. From your perspective, do you feel that the skilled migration sponsorship has become more difficult or more challenging or more onerous over the past few years? And just on top of that, is there any tips that you can offer for our businesses and our clients and our audience that will make it a little bit easier and ultimately lead to be more successful?
Yes, I agree completely that it has become more complex. It has become more difficult over the last few years. There's been lots of bits and pieces that have been added into the mix and more requirements, more regulations. For example, the labour market testing that I mentioned previously, that in itself has been made more onerous, where you have to put an ad through Workforce and you have to write it in a specific way and all these types of things. And the expense now that's been brought in with the Skilling Australians Fund that came in back in 2018, where you have to pay this amount to the training contribution as a training contribution fee to government. If you miss out just something in that labour market testing, you don't get it right, your employment contract is not signed after the date of the end of the labour market testing, you'll get the nomination refused, and that amount of 5,000 or 7,000 or what have you won't be returned to you. So there's various things that have been made more difficult. Skill migration, yes, it's more tricky. You have to get an invitation to be invited. So just because you reach the points threshold doesn't guarantee you an invitation to be invited. So it's become more competitive also. And obviously all of the government changes immigration law on a constant basis, according to sometimes their latest political whim. So that also adds to things. With employer sponsorship, for example, back in 2017, suddenly, out of nowhere, some sponsored employees could apply for permanent residence at the end of their sponsorship, and others suddenly couldn't any longer, dependent upon what occupation they were holding. So we're very much hoping that will change in the migration review. In terms of a top tip, of course, I'm going to say use a migration agent, and one that knows what they're doing. But in all honesty, that's what we're there for, to take away the pain and the stress and the expense. Because yes, on top of those fees I mentioned earlier, there are our professional fees are on top of that and so on. But the reality is, some employers put through a nomination twice and get it refused because they still haven't met the labour market testing requirements. And that could be an expense of about $14,000. So you're much better off to have someone else help you to do it. I wouldn't be doing it by myself any longer. And even 20 years ago, when I migrated to Australia myself, I used a migration agent then, actually, because it was so important.